Get off your couch and go make something in your shed. Well, this is no vision of beauty, but this is a mount to support my Turner 300 gearbox, because I'm going to drop it out and replace the front oil seal. These are holes where the drain bungs fit in the bottom, straddles it up around the sides, and there's a hole in the bottom which bolts onto my 2.5 ton trolley jack, which means I can support the transmission while I unbolt it, pull it back and drop it down and replace the seal, and hopefully reverse the order simply enough. Anyway, stay tuned and I'll show you how we get on. Just starting to prep the gearbox to pull her out, so we're actually looking down. So I removed all the floor coverings, engine cover for the 300 petrol, and we scan down. This is the top of the Turner gearbox, and this is the good old-fashioned gear lever with multiple welds over the years. Look at that, there's one there, and then she heads off up towards the driver there. So first things first. Oh, look at that. I think I need a new rubber for the top of the gearbox. I won't put that on the list of things to do. What are we going to do with that? I'll leave it up on top of the engine. Don't get distracted. The task at hand is I need to remove this top plate. 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not this one. I'm going to lift out the whole top, and that will give me clearance, and if we go upside down here, to push the transmission back past this cross member, because at the moment the top of the gear stick is going to hit it. So if you take off that plate and everything, we should be all good. So, moment, big moment. Got the 4 bolts out, managed to loosen the top plate. Hopefully when I lift it off, nothing falls down into the gearbox. Then we really will have to pull it apart. Right, I'm going to put this somewhere safe. Okay, we've got our rag packed on the top, so we'll go and put it on the support jack and strap it down using a tie down ratchet, and I might tonight start loosening off the bolts. So this is my support bracket, and as you can see it is attached to the 2.5 ton trolley jack, and I can jack it up and down and it will cradle transmission, which is bolted down onto the top of the trolley jack. So it's supported in all directions. As long as the trolley jack doesn't roll over, we won't have any problems. And I'll use a tie down over the top. Don't know how heavy this sucker is, but we'll find out. So I'll jack her up, lock her in. Right, so I've started removing the 4 bolts that hold it in place. So we're up on the right hand side of the gearbox at the moment. So we've got the clutch, and we come up. That's one of the bottom bolts that needs to come out, and there is another bolt up top there, and exactly the same on the left hand side of the gearbox as well. And we'll see how well balanced we have it sitting on our holder. As long as I can wind out these bolts easily by hand, I know there's no crazy forces on the transmission trying to take off on me, like there is on this one. There we go, that's loose now. As in the bolts coming out nice and easy. Okay, that's supported by itself. Clear. Okay, let's back this sucker out and drop it down. Just balancing there nicely. Clear. off the gearbox now. This is the moment where the jack goes flying down. Look at that. There we go. It's out and resting. Easy. And there we have it. Gearbox is out. So it's definitely been leaking out of here and throwing oil around the clutch. And what will happen is eventually it will get into the clutch plates and bugger it. And I've only recently, 15 years ago, replaced this clutch, which is still virtually brand new because we do so little Ks. We only do 1,000 Ks a year, if that. Anyway, I'll clean that up and pull it off and have a look what's in there. So I've just pulled the cover off the front of the gearbox, and we can see a big bearing in there, and there's a remnants of a seal, paper seal. But what we'll do is I'll just use grey Japanese automotive sealant to put it back on, 3 bond. And if we have a look at the bit I've taken off, which is this guy here, this was the tube. Let's come off the front, off here, and in there, if we turn that over, there is our seal. Excuse the shakiness. I'll get rid of that light there, it's making it a little bit tricky. There is a seal that sits just in here, and it's gone hard. So I'll organise a new one of those for tomorrow. Today I've picked up a new seal for this front leaky pinion out of the gearbox, and the size was actually metric, so the inside diameter was 40 and the outside diameter in here is 52, and it appears it's going to fit nicely. It's just a matter of pushing in. Now normally when you're pushing a seal like this, you're pushing them in that way and you've got this big flat edge to push on, but with this you don't. You haven't got much. You've got this little steel edge up here. So what you can do is find a decent sized socket that is exactly the same size, so the socket fits down into where we're going to push it, which is good, and which means it won't hang up. So what we can do is pop that in there, align this up nicely, and I might give it a push on the shop press. We'll do that later on. Meanwhile, I've got to sort out a few other things and we'll come back. We're set up on the hydraulic press here, and we've got two sockets. This is the perfect size one to push it down into the hole, the new seal, and this one's oversized. This is 41. And the reason I want to use this is because we've got to, as I explained, we've got to push on that tiny little edge there. So this one's bigger or wider, which means that it's less chance of it slipping into the middle as we try to push it. And once I've got it started and I do the final push, I'll use the slightly narrower socket because then I can get it down the groove. So we'll push that in now and see what happens. So that started it, and it's sitting down in the groove nice and straight down into the little recess. So we'll use the smaller one now because we can actually push it down all the way now. Get that lined up. About there, I reckon. Slipped off the the side. This is why I used the bigger socket to start with. So hopefully I can get this lined up. There's not much light here. Yeah, I think that's done it. Doesn't take much. The thing to remember is it needs to be in there nice and flush. You don't want the seal mounted on a slight angle, because that means the spinning shaft will effectively rub or sweep on the side of it, and you'll just wear things out. You'll wear your seal out quicker, or pull the lip out. Let's have a look. That looks pretty good to me. That's in there all the way. Good enough. So we're trying to stop the oil getting out from in here. So if we put it in that way, it would be the wrong way. Probably still work, but it actually needs to go that way. So the first seal actually does the sealing for us. And one other thing that makes your seal going a lot easier is a little bit of grease on it, and it'll just slide straight in. We've got sealant on the front of our transmission. Now this hole here is quite important. We can't block that because the bearing oil will flow through here. And if we have a look at the housing, there's a little nick down the bottom there, and that's where the oil flows back into the transmission. So we have to get this on the right orientation. And we'll put on this guy now without cutting the seal on the way through. Now I'm just going to slide it over the seal and line it up with the holes. There we go, done. So I'll stick some bolts in that. I'm going to put a bit of grey sealant on the bolts because they go through into the back of the transmission and I don't want them weeping out the threads. That's what I mean by a bit of sealant on the threads. So when it goes in there, it just oozes out, blocks up the thread so no oil can leak out over the years. That's done. So we'll do these up and it's job done. I think they call this the clutch bearing. Now this guy here is what is pushed up against the clutch pack to release the clutch when you put your foot on the pedal to change gear, and it lives up behind the pressure plates here in the clutch pack and is moved by the clutch lever. There's no spring on this, so when you put your foot on the clutch, it pushes this lever, and by doing so, if we have a look in the back of the gearbox, the clutch, you can see two little fingers there, and they move in and out, and they push onto some fingers inside there. See the fingers? There's one either side of the spline, and there's two more above it, and the bearing I just showed you pushes up against those and releases the clutch. Now you've got to keep a bit of grease, so on those two fingers when you push the clutch in, it slides on the shaft around the outside of the gearbox here, and the two fingers sit in here. So if you clutch in, it does that. When you release the clutch in first gear, you let the clutch out, and what it does is those little four fingers I showed you in there rest on here, and this spins, but spins independent of where the little fingers sit, so you don't wear the fingers out with them rubbing. So when you have the clutch. When you engage the clutch or push it in, this comes up against those fingers and starts to spin, and the clutch pack will slow down. You can change gear and then you let it back out and it engages the clutch pack. Probably explained rather confusing, but go have a look in some books. So I need to keep this shaft well greased, and the bearing feels good in this. It was replaced not so long ago, so I'll just put it all back together. So I have to take this off and actually slide it up into the clutch pack, into those little fingers I was showing you a minute ago. Those guys there. Has to sit between those guys. And I have to jiggle all that in there while pushing the spline through the middle. So what I've got to do here, I don't know if you're in frame, but probably good enough. This is the gearbox which I've got jacked up. I'm going to take off the idler, hope I don't drop that on my phone, and fit that back up in here somehow. And while I'm doing that, I think that's in. Yes, it's sitting between the little fingers. Now I need to move this gearbox up without getting my fingers. And get that pinion through the middle. Yeah, I think I've got that on there now. So I've just spun the back of the output shaft because we're in 4th gear, and I think it's running into the spline on the clutch pack now. I think we've got to go up a bit. A bit more maybe. There we go. I think we're in. So we've got our gearbox just about fully onto the back of the bell housing. Just got to get the little pin in the front of the spline to go into the little bearing up in here, which is in the centre of the flywheel. So I'll come back to you in a minute. So we're on the left hand side of the gearbox now, and I've managed to walk it all the way up, and that's the final gap I've got to go. So the bolts are in, they're sitting loose and they're easy to tighten, and it's just a matter of jiggling it and doing up the bolts gently and wiggling the tail shaft, which you can hear it jiggling away at the moment. And we can get gearbox back in, which is a bit hard to see where we are. Back of this, it's the back there. Anyway, I'll carry on. Time to celebrate. Gearbox is in. All 4 bolts are done up. Still sitting there on its trolley jack with its roughly made Y-frame to hold it up. Made it hugely easy. This was a very easy thing to do because I took the time to make the support bracket for it. Anyway, just got to put some stuff, bits and bobs back on it, and we're back in business. Moment of truth. We'll drop down this trolley jack. Hopefully the transmission stays where it's meant to. Yep. Done. So there we have it. Gearbox back in. New seals front and rear. I got to look at how the clutch sort of works and managed to jiggery poke it all back together. No major issues. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll keep you posted on any other new developments or crazy things I have to fix on this whole girl. See you later.